eyes, while Orm was a huge bulky man with face burned red and hair nearly white from years of sun and sea, but he felt she was somehow the stronger. So after thinking for a while, he said, "Now that I am in a land where folk worship the White Christ, it might be well if I made peace with him as well as his followers. Indeed, most of the Danes have already done so. I will be baptized if you will wed me, Elfrida."
"That is no reason," she cried.
"But think," said Orm slyly. "If you do not wed me, I will not be christened, and then, if we may trust the priests, my soul is lost, and you will have to answer heavily to your God for losing a human soul." He whispered to Athelstane, "Also, I will burn down this house and throw you off the sea cliffs."
"Aye, daughter, we dare not lose a human soul,"
said Athelstane very quickly. Elfrida did not hold out much longer, for indeed Orm was a not ill-looking man, and he was known to be rich and powerful. So Orm was christened, and the next day he wed Elfrida and bore her home to the Danelaw. They lived together contentedly enough, if not always peacefully. There were no churches near, so at Elfrida's wish Orm kept a priest on the land, and for atonement of his sins he paid the priest well. But being a careful man with no wish to offend any of the powers, Orm continued to sacrifice to Thor in midwinter and to Freyr in spring for peace and good harvests, as well as to Odin and Aesir for luck before each sea voyage. All that winter he and the priest quarreled about this, and in spring, not long before Elfrida's child was born, Orm lost his temper and kicked the priest out the door and bade him begone. Elfrida reproached him greatly for this, until he cried that he could stand no more of that woman chatter, and now would have to flee it. A few days later, earlier than he had planned, he left with his ships and spent the summer harrying in Ireland and Scotland. Scarce were his ships out of sight when Elfrida was brought to her bed and gave birth to a child. It was a fine big boy, who after Orm's wish she called Valgard, a name old in that family. But now there was no priest to christen the child, and the nearest church lay a good 2 or 3 days' journey away. She sent a thrall there at once. Meanwhile, she was proud and glad of her son, and often she sang to him as her mother had to her.
"Lullaby, my little bird, of all birds the very best. Hear the gently lowing herd, now the sun is in the west, and 'tis time that you should rest. Lullaby, my little love, nodding sleepy on my breast. See the evening star above, rising from the hill's green crest. Now 'tis time that you should rest. Lullaby, my little one, you and I alike are blessed. God and Mary and their Son guard you, who are but their guest. Now 'tis time that you should rest."
2. Imric the elf-earl rode out one night to see what had happened in the lands of men. It was a cool spring, dark with the moon nearly full, rime glittering on the grass and the stars still hard and bright as in winter. The night was very quiet, save for the sighing of wind in budding branches, and the world was all sliding shadows and cold white light. The hoofs of Imric's horse were shod with an alloy of silver, and there was a high clear ringing in the gloom as they struck the hard ground. The elf-earl rode into a darkling forest. Night lay heavy here, but from afar he saw a ruddy glimmer of fire. When he came there he saw it shone through cracks in a little hut of mud and wattles huddled under a great gnarly oak, from whose boughs Imric remembered the druids cutting mistletoe. He could sense that a witch lived here, so he dismounted and rapped on the door. A woman who seemed old and bent as the tree opened it and saw him standing there, the broken moonlight sheening off his helm and byrnie, and his horse shimmering white and mysterious, cropping the frosty grass behind him. "Good evening, mother," quoth Imric.
"Let none of you elf folk call me mother, who have borne 12 sons to a man,"
grumbled the witch, but she let him in and hastened to pour him a horn of ale. Imric had to stoop inside the tiny hovel and clear away a litter of bones and other trash ere he could sit. He looked at her with the strange slant eyes of the elf folk, all cloudy blue without pupil or white. There were little moon-flecks drifting in Imric's eyes, and shadows of ancient wisdom, for Imric had dwelt long in the land when the first men came. But he was ever youthful, with the broad forehead and high cheekbones, the narrow jaw, and the straight thin chiseled nose of the elf-lords. His hair floated silvery gold, finer than spider silk, from under his horned helmet down to his wide red-caped shoulders.
"'Tis long since the elves have been abroad among men," said the witch.